When you think of the greatest free agent signings in NBA history, you think of the icons. You think of the superstars who abandoned one empire to build another. You think of legends taking their talents to a new city and changing basketball forever. You know, the moves that reshape history overnight. But sometimes, the greatest signing isn't the one everyone celebrates. It's the one everyone questions. The one born not from certainty, but desperation. For nearly half a century, basketball's biggest stage had become home to basketball's biggest heartbreaks. There was 1994, one win away from immortality, one Game 7 away from ending 21 years of waiting. Instead,
the Houston Rockets are the 1993-94 NBA champions.
Yeah. There was 1999, an 8th seed, a miracle run, a city that believed destiny had finally arrived, only to run into a young dynasty from San Antonio. And then, nothing. Years turned into decades. Bad contracts, failed experiments, false hope. Disappointment became tradition, basically. Madison Square Garden wasn't basketball's mecca anymore. It was more like basketball's cautionary tale. Then came Carmelo Anthony. For a moment, there was hope again. 54 wins, playoff basketball, MVP chants, but hope faded, and the darkness returned. More losing and more dysfunction and more laughter from the rest of the league. Until the summer of 2022, when New York handed 4 years and $104 million to a 6'2" wide-body point guard, a second-round pick, and a player who had never made an All-Star team. A player who most people believe had benefited from playing next to Luka Doncic. And when the deal became official, the basketball world laughed. They called it an overpay. They called it nepotism. They even called it desperation. But what nobody knew was that the Knicks had just signed the greatest free agent in their franchise history. And maybe the greatest free agent signing the NBA had ever seen. Long before Madison Square Garden echoed with his name, Jalen Brunson was born into basketball. His father, Rick Brunson, spent 9 seasons in the NBA, suiting up for 8 different teams, including the Chicago Bulls and even the New York Knicks. Because of his father's career, the Brunson family moved often. 7 times, in fact. But in 2010, they finally settled down in Lincolnshire, Illinois, a city just 35 minutes north of Chicago. Growing up, Jalen wasn't watching the league from the stands. He was inside NBA locker rooms. And while other kids were doing homework after school, his father Rick had something else planned. Workouts. Endless workouts. Because he knew exactly what it took to make it. And it was there, at Stevenson High School, where Jalen Brunson's journey truly began. By the time his family settled in Illinois, basketball had already become a way of life. As a teenager, Jalen trained alongside the youngest MVP ever, Derrick Rose, and Defensive Player of the Year, Joakim Noah. And while most prospects dreamed of playing in the NBA, Brunson really just dreamed of winning. As a freshman in 2012, there wasn't much fanfare on Jalen. No national rankings, no headlines. He was just a skinny guard trying to make a name for himself. Still, his play earned him all Lake County honorable mention honors. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. And just less than 365 days later, in his sophomore year, everything changed. Brunson and Stevenson High caught fire. After beginning the season 10-4, they rattled off 19 consecutive victories and marched all the way to the Illinois 4A state championship game. Waiting for them was a dynasty, Simeon Career Academy, 3-time defending state champions, and a roster featuring future NBA players Jabari Parker and Kendrick Nunn. Brunson attacked fearlessly. He even got Simeon's backcourt into foul trouble in the first half. But in the second half, the defending champs adjusted. Brunson scored just 1 point after halftime, and Stevenson's dream season ended with a crushing 58-40 defeat. Still, as just a sophomore, Brunson averaged over 21 points per game and was named to the second-team All-State. He was the only sophomore on either of the 2 top teams, but he wasn't satisfied, not even close. As a junior, Brunson became unstoppable. On February 21st, 2014, he scored 57 points in a double overtime thriller against Lake Forest High School, a new school record and a new career scoring record. But his defining moment came 1 month later in the state semifinals. Stevenson versus Whitney Young, led by future NBA 3rd overall pick Jahlil Okafor. Brunson refused to go quietly. He exploded for 56 points, an Illinois playoff scoring record. But once again, the better team won. Another devastating loss was added to Jalen's resume, and he experienced another year of just ending short. Still, Jalen averaged 26 points, nearly 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals a game. He was named Illinois' Gatorade Player of the Year, and suddenly, the nation was paying attention. Brunson entered his senior season carrying the weight of unfinished business. For 2 straight years, his dreams have been crushed by teams led by Chicago legends Jabari Parker and Jahlil Okafor. And there was one more challenge around every corner. Jason Tatum and Chaminade, Findlay Prep, the #1 team in the country, future Arizona star Alonzo Trier, another showdown with Simeon. Everywhere Brunson and Stevenson turned, there was another giant. But unlike past years, Brunson really wasn't interested in moral victories. In his senior season, he averaged 23.5 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, shooting 38% from the 3 and 83% from the free throw line. Brunson was named a first-team All-American, the number 16 player in the nation, and the second-ranked point guard in America. He became a McDonald's All-American, played in a Nike Hoop Summit, and became one of the greatest players the state of Illinois had ever seen. But there was one accomplishment missing, and that was a championship. After 3 consecutive Final Four appearances, years of heartbreak, and years of falling short, in 2015, Jalen Brunson walked into a game against Normal Community High and set the record of 30 points in the state championship game. Jalen and Stevenson High School won the game 57-40 and secured the first basketball state championship in school history and Lake County history. After several years of being in the shadows of Jabari Parker and Jahlil Okafor, Jalen finished his high school career as Illinois' Mr. Basketball. And if there was one thing Jalen Brunson had proven, was that it didn't matter how many times you knocked him down. He was always going to come back stronger. By the fall of 2015, Brunson had already accomplished almost everything a high school player could dream of. He was Illinois' Mr. Basketball, Gatorade Player of the Year, he was selected as a McDonald's All-American, and he won a state championship. All of this led to him committing to Villanova University. But at Villanova, none of the stuff he did in high school mattered anymore. Because for head coach Jay Wright, he only wanted winners. He didn't accept the star hierarchy. And from day one, Brunson fit right in. As a freshman at Villanova, Brunson was thrown into the starting lineup immediately. He didn't have time to ease in. He didn't take a redshirt year. It was basically just responsibility from the jump. The Wildcats climbed to #1 in the country for the first time in school history. And while Brunson wasn't the leading scorer, he was something perhaps more valuable. He was reliable. Brunson made an immediate impact by starting 39 of 40 games and averaging 9.5 points, 2.5 assists, and 2 rebounds per game. He showcased his efficiency as a young guard by shooting 45% from the field and an impressive 38% from beyond the arc, earning a spot on the Big East All-Freshman team. And when Villanova faced Kansas in the Elite Eight, Brunson calmly sank 2 free throws in the closing seconds to secure a trip to the Final Four. And a few days later, Villanova would dramatically defeat North Carolina on one of the most clutch shots in basketball history. And at just 18 years old, Jalen Brunson was a national champion. Now you would think most players would be satisfied after the year Jalen had, but he wasn't. As a sophomore at Villanova, he transformed from a game manager into a star. 26 points against LaSalle, 27 points against 10th ranked Creighton, and by season's end, he had become a unanimous first-team All-Big East selection. After nearly averaging 15 points and 4 assists a game, many believed that he was NBA ready, but Brunson wasn't finished. After Villanova was upset in the round of 32 as the 1 seed by 8 seed Wisconsin, he returned to Villanova, and that decision would change everything. By his junior year, Jalen Brunson wasn't just one of the best guards in the country, he was one of the best players in college basketball. He opened the season by leading Villanova to the Battle for Atlantis championship, earning tournament MVP honors. He scored 31 points against Temple, another 31 against Butler, and 31 against Marquette. Night after night, he controlled games with maturity that made coaches rave about him. And while most stars dazzled with athleticism, Brunson suffocated opponents with intelligence, his footwork, his poise, and his ability to make the right decision every single time. He was basketball's ultimate problem solver. And after averaging 19 points, 4.5 assists, and 3 rebounds a night while shooting 52% from the field and 41% from the three-point range in a regular season, the awards came flooding in. Big East Player of the Year, Big East Scholar Athlete of the Year, Consensus First Team All-American, the Bob Cousy Award winner, the Naismith Player of the Year, the Wooden Award winner, the Oscar Robertson Trophy, the Associated Press Player of the Year. Virtually every major award college basketball had to offer, Jalen captured. But there was still unfinished business that he had to attend. Jalen capped off his National Player of the Year season by leading Villanova to a 2018 NCAA March Madness championship, securing the title with the 79-62 victory over Michigan. Throughout the historic 6-game tournament run, the star point guard averaged 16 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds per game. His tournament was highlighted by a dominant 27-point performance in the Sweet 16 against West Virginia, cementing his legacy as the leader of one of college basketball's most dominant championship teams. And when the confetti fell for the second time in 3 years, he had done it. 2 national championships, National Player of the Year, and one of the most decorated players in college basketball history. And yet, as the 2018 NBA draft approached, questions still remained. Could he defend? Was he athletic enough? Was he too small? Did he have enough upside? Because despite all the winning that Jalen had done in his career, despite all the awards, despite proving everyone wrong for nearly a decade, NBA executives still saw limitations. And on draft night, 32 teams would remind him exactly what they thought. On June 21st, 2018, the NBA draft was underway. And pick after pick, guards were flying off the board like never before. Luka Doncic went 3rd overall to Atlanta before being traded to Dallas. Trae Young then followed him at number 5, being drafted by Dallas just to be traded for Luka Doncic. Colin Sexton went 8th. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander went 11th. Jerome Robinson 13th. Aaron Holiday 23rd. Landry Shamet 26th. Javon Carter 32nd. And finally,
with the 33rd pick in the 2018 NBA Draft, the Dallas Mavericks select Jalen Brunson from Villanova University.
With the 33rd overall pick in the second round, the Dallas Mavericks called Jalen Brunson's name. He became the 4th and final Villanova player selected in the draft. Despite being a second-round pick, Dallas handed him a 4-year contract structured similarly to a first-round selection, with 3 fully guaranteed years. Jalen wasn't getting lottery money or even first-round money, but it was still a sign that Dallas showed belief in him. Brunson entered the NBA during a transitional period in Dallas, where the Mavericks were closing the Dirk Nowitzki chapter, and he quickly started proving that he belonged, carrying over the poise, intelligence, and decision-making that defined the championship years at Villanova. This quickly earned the trust of head coach Rick Carlisle, and Brunson appeared in 73 games, making 38 starts, while averaging 9.5 points, 3 assists, 2.5 rebounds, in just under 22 minutes a night, all while shooting 46.7% from the field and nearly 35% from the three. Serving primarily as a secondary playmaker, Brunson later admitted that watching his fellow rookie navigate the NBA forced him to reevaluate and elevate his own approach to the game. And that fellow rookie was Luka Doncic. Acquired on draft night in a blockbuster trade with Atlanta, the 19-year-old Slovenian sensation immediately became the face of the franchise. Doncic took the league by storm, averaging 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. His effortless step-back threes, elite court vision, and uncanny poise in clutch moments made him the runaway winner for the 2018-19 Rookie of the Year award, finishing comfortably ahead of Trae Young and DeAndre Ayton. But despite the promise of their rookie backcourt, the Mavericks spent much of the season reshaping their roster. Veterans came and went, and the organization celebrated the farewell season of franchise icon and legend Dirk Nowitzki, who retired after 21 legendary years in Dallas. And in the midst of a brutal Western Conference, consistency proved elusive. Dallas finished with a 33-49 record, tied with both the Memphis Grizzlies and New Orleans Pelicans, ultimately leaving them with the second worst record in the West. But still, buried beneath the losing season, something special had quietly begun. The Mavericks believed that they had found their future superstar in Luka Doncic, but what they didn't know was that they had found another one just 30 spots later in the same draft. Entering his second season, Jalen Brunson had already established himself as a dependable piece of Rick Carlisle's rotation. With Luka rapidly ascending, Brunson embraced a new role as the leader of Dallas' second unit. While his minutes dipped slightly to 18 per game to accommodate a deeper roster, his impact remained. Appearing in 57 games and making 16 starts, Brunson averaged 8 points, 3.5 assists, and 2.5 rebounds, while improving his three-point shooting to 36%, and continuing to display the efficiency and poise that had become his trademark. But while Brunson quietly continued to develop, his backcourt partner was exploding into superstardom. With his Rookie of the Year trophy already secured, Luka Doncic skipped right over the sophomore slump and entered the MVP conversation. At just 21 years old, he averaged 29 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 9 assists a night. His brilliance earned him his first All-Star appearance and an All-NBA first-team selection. Under his leadership, the Mavericks posted a 116.7 offensive rating, which at the time stood as the highest offensive efficiency in NBA history. And for the first time since Dirk's retirement, hope had returned to Dallas. The Mavericks surged up the standings and looked poised to become one of the West's rising powers. But then, everything stopped. In March of 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic brought the sports world to a halt. The NBA suspended its season indefinitely, and uncertainty gripped the league. And just weeks earlier, Jalen Brunson had suffered the first major setback of his professional career. In late February, Brunson tore the labrum in his right shoulder, an injury that required season-ending surgery. After months of growth and another year of proving himself, his season was over. As the NBA prepared to resume inside the isolated Orlando bubble, Brunson could do nothing and only watch from the sidelines in street clothes and a mask. Even without their backup point guard, Dallas finished 43-32 and secured the 7th seed, snapping a 3-year playoff drought. Waiting for them in the first round was Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and the heavily favored Los Angeles Clippers. The series lasted 6 games, but it was far more competitive than anyone expected. Luka's legendary Game 4 buzzer beater announced his arrival on the playoff stage and showed the basketball world that Dallas was no longer rebuilding. Jalen Brunson wasn't on the floor for Dallas' return to the postseason, but as the Mavericks laid the foundation for something bigger, their young point guard was forced to watch, and for the first time in his life, winning wasn't something that he could control. After spending the bubble watching from the sidelines, Jalen entered the 2020-21 season with something to prove. Fresh off shoulder surgery, there were questions about how quickly he could return to form, but those questions didn't last long. In a season shortened to 72 games due to pandemic scheduling delays, Brunson transformed into one of the NBA's most dangerous bench weapons, serving as the unquestioned leader of Dallas' second unit. He appeared in 68 games and posted career highs across the board, averaging 12.5 points, 3.5 assists, and 3.5 rebounds in 25 minutes per game. More impressive than the numbers was the efficiency. Brunson shot a blistering 52.3% from the field and a career best 40.5% from beyond the arc, becoming Rick Carlisle's safety valve whenever Luka Doncic needed a breather. Night after night, Brunson gave Dallas something every contender needs: control. When the offense became stagnant, he steadied it. When the game sped up, he slowed it down. And when the stars rested, he kept the Mavericks afloat. Brunson's brilliance finally caught the attention of the rest of the league, as he finished 4th in Sixth Man of the Year voting, trailing Jordan Clarkson, Joe Ingles, and his former mentor Derrick Rose. Sharing a spotlight with fellow reserve Tim Hardaway Jr., Brunson had become one of basketball's most trusted backup point guards, but the season itself was anything but stable. In January 2021, COVID-19 ravaged the Mavericks. Josh Richardson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Maxi Kleber, and multiple key contributors missed extended stretches due to health and safety protocols. Brunson himself was forced into quarantine, and when he returned with a statement. Without Luka Doncic, Brunson carried Dallas against the Chicago Bulls, exploding for 31 points and 7 assists. It was the type of performance that proved something bigger. He wasn't just a backup, but that he could also lead. Behind the scenes, however, cracks were beginning to form. Rumors swirled about the growing tension between Luka and Kristaps Porzingis. Frustration with Rick Carlisle's demanding coaching style was mounting, and through it all, Brunson became the glue that held everything together. He earned praise throughout Dallas for keeping his head down and doing what he had always done: win. Thanks to another All-NBA first-team season from Luka and the steady hand of Brunson, Dallas captured its first Southwest Division title since 2010. finishing 42-30. The Mavericks secured the 5th seed and avoided the NBA's newly implemented play-in tournament. And waiting for them in the first round was the Los Angeles Clippers, again. For the second straight season, Dallas faced Kawhi, Paul George, and the Clippers. But this time, the Mavericks stormed into Los Angeles and stole the first 2 games on the road, taking a stunning 2-0 series lead. It looked as if Dallas was finally ready to slay the Giant, but Tyronn Lue had other plans. Lue's adjustments exposed Dallas's weaknesses. The Clippers' hyper-small lineups neutralized Brunson's size and physicality. After dominating all season, he struggled under the playoff pressure, averaging only just 8 points per game on 45% shooting. In crunch time, Rick Carlisle increasingly turned to veteran Trey Burke instead, and after leading the series 2-0, Dallas collapsed. The Mavericks lost in 7 games, and another season was just another first-round exit. And as devastating as the collapse was, the aftermath would prove even more significant. Within weeks, longtime general manager Donnie Nelson was gone. Then came an even bigger shock. After 13 seasons on the same sideline, Rick Carlisle stepped down as the Mavericks head coach. And for the Mavericks, an era had ended. And for Jalen Brunson, the biggest season of his career was about to begin. Before the breakout, there was doubt. Not from fans, not from opponents, but from his own organization. In the summer of 2021, and again during the January extension window, Brunson was open to signing a 4-year, $55 million extension, which was the maximum Dallas could offer at the time. But the Mavericks hesitated. In their minds, they couldn't forget what happened against the Clippers. Jalen's size had been exposed, and his playoff struggles left questions on the table. Dallas wanted more proof before committing long-term money. But by the time Dallas finally circled back in February, Brunson's camp declined. The price had gone up, and so had his confidence.
It happened, and then so the deal came on the table after the trade deadline. I was like, no, I think I've outgrown that now.
Right. Okay.
Personally, that's what I thought. I think I've outgrown that.
With Rick Carlisle gone, newly hired head coach Jason Kidd made a critical adjustment. He inserted Jalen Brunson to the starting lineup alongside Luka Doncic, and suddenly, everything clicked. Playing 79 games and starting 61 of them, Brunson put together the most complete season of his career. He averaged 16.5 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds while shooting over 50% from the field, 37% from the 3, and 84% from the line. He became the stabilizing force Dallas desperately needed, and whenever Luka missed time with ankle injuries, Brunson effortlessly slid into the role of primary creator, proving he was much more than a luxury backup, but that he was a starting caliber point guard. And this was enough to lead Dallas to a 52-win season and the 4th seed in the West. But then, disaster struck. In the final game of the regular season, Luka Doncic suffered a calf strain. The franchise's superstar would miss the opening games of the playoffs against Donovan Mitchell and the heavily favored 5th seed Utah Jazz. And with Dallas suddenly without its engine, most experts predicted disaster. Instead, they got Jalen Brunson. In Game 1, Brunson scored 24 points with 7 rebounds and 5 assists, keeping an undermanned Mavericks team competitive despite a 99-93 loss at home. Dallas trailed the series, and the pressure mounted. But then came Game 2, the greatest performance of his career at the time. 41 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 0 turnovers, while shooting 15 for 25 from the floor, single-handedly saving Dallas' season in a 110-104 victory to tie the series 1-1. 2 nights later, Brunson walked into Utah and dropped 31 points and 6 assists on 54% shooting, stealing home court advantage and giving Dallas a 2-1 series lead before Luka ever stepped back onto the floor. Jalen Brunson didn't just survive without Luka Doncic, he dominated. He systematically dismantled Utah's perimeter defense. He neutralized Rudy Gobert's rim protection with a relentless combination of floaters, mid-range pull-ups, and veteran footwork. And somewhere around the league, executives started paying attention. When Luka returned, Brunson remained a lethal second option, and Dallas would defeat the Jazz in 6 games, finally advancing past the first round. Together, the 2018 draft duo and the Mavericks shocked the basketball world, eliminating the first-seeded 64-win Phoenix Suns in one of the most humiliating Game 7 defeats in NBA history. Dallas advanced to the Western Conference Finals, where they would ultimately meet their demise in 5 games to Stephen Curry and the Warriors, but over their entire 18-game playoff run, Brunson averaged 22 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. it was clearly evident that he had finally arrived. By June 2022, Jalen Brunson was no longer viewed as a backup point guard. He was a proven playoff floor general, and as free agency approached, 3 teams had emerged. New York was aggressive, offering 4 years and $104 million. But to make it happen, they orchestrated multiple draft night trades, dumping the contracts of Kemba Walker, Alec Burks, and Nerlens Noel just to create cap space necessary to sign him. Dallas had his bird rights and could offer a 5th year, but eternally, the organization refused to offer a max contract and never even presented a formal 5-year proposal capable of pulling him away from New York. Detroit lurked in the background with cap space and plans to make Brunson their lead guard, but once New York's pursuit became clear, the meeting was canceled. And when the numbers leaked, the basketball world laughed. Many critics argue that Brunson only looked good because he played next to Luka Doncic. They questioned whether he could create offense as the focal point of a scouting report. At 6'2", analysts pointed to his struggles against the Clippers and claimed a team built around a small guard had a limited ceiling. And with Leon Rose running the front office and Rick Brunson joining Tom Thibodeau's staff, rival executives mocked the move as nepotism, and the NBA even stripped New York of a future second-round pick for tampering.
Look at it all. Trading a first-round pick away. And for what? To go all in on clearing cap space in hopes of signing Jalen Brunson? Look, I mean, Jalen Brunson is a nice player. Hope the brother comes, hope he gets paid. But the Knicks are acting like he's KD. I'm going to repeat. Jalen Brunson.
To many, it was another desperate Knicks move, another overpay, and just another mistake. But what nobody realized was that New York wasn't just signing a point guard. They were signing hope. In July of 2022, Jalen Brunson officially signed a 4-year, $104 million contract with the Knicks, and almost immediately, the criticism had poured in.
Brunson's just not a game changer. Having followed the sport for 3 decades, I don't love the Jalen Brunson signing. I think it's too much money, and I think if anybody screams potential bust in this class, if anybody is that bust, to me it's Jalen Brunson going to the Knicks.
The prevailing thought around the league was simple. Jalen Brunson wasn't elevating New York, and New York was overpaying for a product of the Luka system. And honestly, nobody expected him to save them. Not after the Knicks had just finished 37-45 and missed the playoffs entirely. Not after decades of disappointment. Not after Stephon Marbury, Raymond Felton, Linsanity, or even Kemba Walker. Knicks fans weren't expecting a savior this time around. They were just preparing for another failed point guard experiment. But while the basketball world focused on the contract at hand, head coach Tom Thibodeau focused on building a team. And the roster Brunson inherited was talented, but fractured. At the helm, Julius Randle remained the incumbent all-star. In just 2 years removed from an all-NBA season, he was coming off one of the most frustrating years of his career. The efficiency had vanished, the confidence had wavered, and the pressure in New York had begun to consume him. Then there was RJ Barrett, the former 3rd overall pick, entering his 4th season searching for consistency. The talent was undeniable, but after 3 years, nobody knew if he could become the star New York desperately needed. Mitchell Robinson anchored the paint, an elite rebounder and shot blocker, and his job was simple: protect the rim and clean up the mistakes. Meanwhile, Emmanuel Quickley and Quentin Grimes brought youth, energy, and defensive versatility to the backcourt. There were pieces, but pieces don't win. Teams do. And perhaps that's what everyone misunderstood. The Knicks weren't asking Jalen Brunson to be Luka Doncic, or LeBron, or even Kevin Durant. They were asking him to do something much harder. They were asking to bring stability to the most unstable franchise in basketball, to restore belief to the sport's biggest stage, and to revive a fan base that had spent half a century waiting for someone to finally lead them out of the darkness. Nobody knew it then, but the resurrection had already begun. In his first season in New York, Brunson completely shattered every expectation, taking on the heaviest offensive burden of his career. He immediately transformed into the engine for the Knicks. He weaponized his footwork, his patience, and his deadly mid-range game, averaging 24 points, 6 assists, and 3.5 rebounds, all while shooting an efficient 49% from the field, over 41% from 3, and nearly 83% from the free throw line. The so-called overpay was beginning to look like a steal. More importantly, the Knicks were winning. Brunson brought organization and calm to a franchise that had spent years searching for an identity. And then right before the trade deadline, help arrived. On February 8th, 2023, the Knicks acquired Josh Hart from Portland in exchange for Cam Reddish, Ryan Arcidiacono, Svi Mikhailuk, and a protected first-round pick. New York reunited Brunson with his Villanova brother, and almost instantly, everything clicked. Hart brought toughness, rebounding, defense, energy, and togetherness. Together, the former Wildcats helped cultivate a culture that the Knicks fans hadn't seen in years. Yet, despite putting up fringe all-star numbers, Jalen Brunson was left off the 2023 All-Star team. The omission sparked debate across the league, but Brunson didn't complain. He just kept winning. Behind Brunson's leadership and playmaking, New York finished 47-35, earning the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference, and suddenly, the critics grew quieter. But the playoffs, that's where everything changed. In the first round, the Knicks faced the heavily favored 4th-seeded Cleveland Cavaliers, led by Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen, a team many believe was built for postseason success. But Jalen Brunson had other plans. Brunson completely outplayed Donovan Mitchell once again, averaging 24 points and 5 assists. He orchestrated New York's first playoff series victory since 2013. The Knicks won the series in 5 games, and Madison Square Garden had life again. For the first time in a decade, New York believed. But waiting in the second round was the Miami Heat on a legendary 8th-seeded play-in run. And unfortunately for New York, Julius Randle struggled, R.J. Barrett struggled, and Eric Spoelstra's defense suffocated everyone. Everyone except for Jalen Brunson. In defeat, Brunson authored one of the greatest individual playoff performances in franchise history, averaging 31 points per game, carrying the offense almost entirely by himself. And in Game 6, with the season hanging in the balance, he refused to sit, like literally refused to sit. 48 minutes and 41 points. Jalen spent every second, every possession, and every ounce of energy trying to save New York's season. Although the Knicks fell in 6 games to the Heat, something had changed. The pressure, the criticism, the questions, they were gone. Over 11 playoff games, Jalen Brunson averaged 28 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds. He wasn't just a good signing anymore. He wasn't just an all-star snub. He wasn't just a product of Luka Doncic. He was becoming something much bigger. Not just the face of the franchise, not just the leader of the team, but the man New York had spent 50 years searching for. Their king. Heading into the summer of 2023, the narrative surrounding the Knicks had completely shifted. The doubt that surrounded Jalen Brunson's contract just 1 year prior had disappeared. Instead of debating whether he was worth the money, the front office was now aggressively optimizing the roster around him. Leon Rose's objective was clear: maximize shooting, perimeter defense, and positional versatility to elevate Brunson and the Knicks into legitimate contenders. The first domino fell in free agency when the Knicks signed Dante DiVincenzo to a 4-year, $50 million contract after his lone season with the Golden State Warriors. His arrival reunited Brunson and Josh Hart with another Villanova national champion, giving birth to the now iconic Nova Knicks storyline. Just weeks later, New York doubled down on his identity by signing Josh Hart to a 4-year, $81 million extension, securing one of the league's premier glue guys for the foreseeable future. But not every move came without sacrifice. Former 8th overall pick Obi Toppin was traded to the Indiana Pacers for a package of second-round picks, which was a move designed to clear front court minutes, shed salary, and further embrace Tom Thibodeau's physical brand of basketball. Meanwhile, Derrick Rose was allowed to walk in free agency, officially clearing any remaining logjam in the backcourt and symbolically handing Brunson the keys to the franchise. Unlike his arrival a year earlier, Brunson entered his second season in New York carrying an entirely different burden. The league was no longer sleeping on him. Expectations had skyrocketed, and he was expected to lead the Knicks to a top 4 seed and prove that their second-round playoff run wasn't simply a magical season, but that it was the beginning of something sustainable. Brunson opened the season alongside a familiar core of Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and Mitchell Robinson. But just as the Knicks began building momentum, everything changed. On December 30th, 2023, New York pulled the trigger on one of the biggest trades of the season. The Knicks sent R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley to the Toronto Raptors in exchange for OG Anunoby, Precious Achiuwa, and Malachi Flynn. While Barrett and Quickley had become fan favorites, OG Anunoby's elite perimeter defense and ability to guard virtually every position on the floor fit seamlessly next to Brunson, and the impact was immediate. The Knicks ripped off a remarkable 14-2 stretch during January, instantly transforming into one of the NBA's hottest teams. With elite defensive structure behind him and complete control of the offense, Brunson elevated his game to heights Knicks fans hadn't seen in decades. Brunson averaged 29 points per game, fourth in the entire NBA, along with 7 assists and 4 rebounds, while shooting an elite 48% from the field, 40% from 3, and 84% from the free throw line. He was rewarded with his first All-Star selection of his career, but the accolades were only beginning. On March 29, 2024, Brunson delivered one of the greatest individual performances in franchise history. Even though the Knicks ultimately fell to the San Antonio Spurs in a heartbreaking 130-126 overtime thriller, Brunson authored an unforgettable masterpiece. He poured in 61 points on an astonishing 25 of 47 shooting, the most field goal attempts by any NBA player since Kobe Bryant's final game in 2016. And he added 6 assists and 4 rebounds, finishing just 1 point shy of Carmelo Anthony's franchise record of 62 points. What made the performance even more remarkable was the stage. Across from him stood generational rookie Victor Wembanyama, who answered with a dominant 40-point, 20-rebound performance of his own, creating one of the most memorable regular season duels in recent NBA history. Performances like that catapulted Brunson into conversations reserved for basketball's elite. He earned his first All-NBA second-team selection and finished 5th in NBA MVP voting, firmly cementing himself as the unquestioned cornerstone of the Knicks franchise. Even more impressive was what Brunson accomplished despite the circumstances around him. The Knicks finished 50-32 and claimed a second seed in the Eastern Conference, but the roster slowly crumbled throughout the season. Julius Randle dislocated his shoulder in late January and underwent season-ending surgery. Mitchell Robinson missed significant time, and OG Anunoby battled injuries throughout the second half of the season. Night after night, Brunson was forced to shoulder one of the heaviest workloads in basketball, routinely dropping 40-point performances simply to keep New York afloat. In the opening round against the 76ers, Brunson was nothing short of spectacular. In a physical, emotionally draining 6-game war, he scored 40 or more points in 3 consecutive games. Whenever Philadelphia appeared ready to seize control of the series, Brunson answered, dragging the Knicks to a 4-2 series victory and their second consecutive trip to the second round. Waiting in the second round were the Indiana Pacers, but by then, New York was running on fumes. Brunson routinely logged more than 43 minutes per night and delivered 2 more 40-point performances, refusing to let the season end. But the heroic run met a heartbreaking end in Game 7. Midway through the second half, Brunson fractured his left hand, and the heart and soul of the Knicks was forced to watch as the Knicks lost 130-109. The season was over, but the message had been delivered. Although the Knicks fell one step short of the Eastern Conference Finals, the 23-24 season changed how Jalen Brunson was viewed, not just in New York, but throughout the whole entire league. He wasn't just an incredibly valued contract anymore. He had evolved into one of basketball's true superstars, a legitimate MVP candidate, and the heartbeat of Madison Square Garden. By the summer of 2024, Brunson had already become the face of the Knicks. But what happened next transformed him into something much bigger, a legend in the city of New York. On July 12, 2024, Brunson signed a 4-year, $156.5 million extension, and in doing so, he willingly left $113 million on the table. Had he waited until free agency in 2025, he would have been eligible for a 5-year, $269 million Supermax extension. But money wasn't his priority. Winning was. Brunson deliberately took less to help New York avoid the restrictive second apron, giving the front office flexibility to continue building around him. In an era where stars try to squeeze every dollar possible, Captain Clutch gave money back. And thanks to Brunson, the front office pushed all their chips to the center of the table. In late June, New York acquired Mikal Bridges from Brooklyn for the price of 5 first-round picks, a pick swap, and Bojan Bogdanovic. New York paid a historic price, but the move reunited Brunson with the 4th and final member of the Villanova Championship Brotherhood. The Nova Knicks were complete, and for a brief moment, everything felt perfect. The chemistry was instant and the vibes were immaculate. However, days before training camp, New York made another blockbuster move. The Knicks acquired 4-time All-Star Karl Anthony Towns, but the price was steep. Julius Randle, and heartbreakingly, Dante DiVincenzo. The move shattered the power of friendship narrative that the Knicks had been building, that had defined the summer. Critics argued that the Knicks had mortgaged their future, their draft picks, their identity, basically everything, just for one title window. But Tom Thibodeau steadied the ship, and despite massive roster changes, the Knicks improved to 51-31, earning the 3rd seed in a loaded Eastern Conference. Their 118.5 offensive rating ranked 5th in the NBA, and Brunson remained the head of the snake. He averaged 26 points and a career-high 7.5 assists. He made his second consecutive All-Star team and earned All-NBA second team honors for the second straight year, and was named NBA Clutch Player of the Year. Because when games became uncomfortable, Jalen Brunson became inevitable.
Jalen Brunson does it again!
The first round brought Cade Cunningham and a young, hungry Pistons team, but experience prevailed. The Knicks won all 3 games in Detroit and advanced to 6 games. Nobody expected what happened next though. In Game 1 of the second round, down 20 against the defending champs on the road, New York came all the way back and won in overtime against Boston. In Game 2, down 20, they did it again. 2 games, 2 miracles, and suddenly, the defending champs were on the ropes. In Game 4, Brunson delivered a masterpiece, dropping 39 points and 12 assists. And with Jason Tatum suffering a devastating Achilles injury in the midst of a 42-point masterclass, New York seized the commanding 3-1 lead. After losing Game 5 in Boston, thanks to the heroic efforts of Jaylen Brown and Derek White, New York wasn't about to squander a 3-1 lead to the Tatumless Celtics. Game 6 wasn't dramatic. In fact, it was domination. The Knicks won 119-81, winning the series 4-2, and the New York Knicks reached the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years. And New York lost its mind. But waiting in the Eastern Conference Finals was Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers in the middle of a magical run. For 45 minutes of Game 1, the Knicks played beautiful basketball. But up 14 with under 3 minutes to go, Madison Square Garden was ready to explode. Then, Aaron Nesmith caught fire, zipping in 6 threes on 7 attempts in the fourth quarter alone. Then Tyrese Halliburton hit an impossible shot at the buzzer, and the game slipped away. New York fought, but months of heavy minutes in the emotional war against Boston had taken its toll. Indiana's depth, pace, and youth eventually wore the Knicks down, and in Game 6, the dream ended. It hurt because they were so close, but for the first time in a quarter century, Madison Square Garden mattered again. For the first time in a generation, the Knicks weren't a joke, they were contenders. And for the first time in 50 years, New York believed the championship was possible, because Jalen Brunson hadn't just changed a basketball team, he had resurrected a city. The summer of 2025 began with a controversial decision. Despite leading the Knicks to their first Eastern Conference Finals appearance in 25 years, Tom Thibodeau was dismissed. Ownership believed his coaching style and reliance on heavy minutes placed a ceiling on the franchise's championship aspirations. In response, New York handed the reins to Mike Brown. Heading into the season, Vegas gave New York plus 900 championship odds, placing them behind several perceived contenders. Any doubts quickly disappeared, though. The Knicks stormed through the Emirates NBA Cup, defeating Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs to capture the in-season title. Under Mike Brown, New York finished 53-29, earning the 3rd seed in the East, and with the league's 3rd best offensive rating and a suffocating defense, the Knicks had officially become a championship-caliber team. Surrounded by elite talent, Jalen Brunson no longer had to shoulder every offensive possession. Instead, he orchestrated the league's most balanced attack, averaging 26 points, 7 assists, and 3.5 rebounds a night, while earning his 3rd consecutive All-Star appearance and 3rd straight All-NBA second-team selection, further cementing him as one of the basketball's premier guards. At the trade deadline, New York made an under-the-radar move that transformed his bench entirely. Brooklyn native Jose Alvarado was traded from New Orleans, bringing relentless ball pressure, infectious energy, and giving Mike Brown the perfect spark whenever Brunson rested. The playoffs opened against a familiar rival. After New York won Game 1 at home, Atlanta stole Games 2 and 3 on back-to-back daggers from CJ McCollum, putting the Knicks in a 1-2 hole. Suddenly, the pressure intensified. Karl Anthony Towns answered with a triple-double in Game 4 to even the series. And back at Madison Square Garden, Brunson delivered 39 points and 8 assists without a single turnover, relentlessly hunting CJ McCollum in switches. Then, in Game 6, the Knicks produced one of the most dominant performances in playoff history. New York opened with a soul-snatching 67-14 run. OG Anunoby scored 29 points with 4 steals, Mikal Bridges added 24, and Brunson just needed 29 minutes to contribute 17 points and 8 assists as the Knicks demolished Atlanta 140-89, advancing with a 51-point statement victory. Going into the second round, Philly had just erased a 3-1 deficit against Boston. But against New York, they had no answers. Brunson carved apart the Sixers' defense with games of 35 points, 26 points, 33 points, and 22 points, leading the Knicks to a sweep and a second straight Eastern Conference Finals appearance. The Knicks waited almost a week before even playing against Cleveland in the conference finals, and when they found themselves down 22 in Game 1 at home, Brunson erupted for 15 fourth-quarter points before finishing with 38 points and 6 assists. He followed it with a playoff-high 14 assists in Game 2, 30 points in Game 3, and watched the Knicks complete a 37-point blowout in Game 4 to reach their first NBA Finals since 1999. Averaging 25.5 points and 8 assists, Brunson accepted the Larry Bird Trophy as Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Waiting in the NBA Finals stood the MVP candidate Victor Wembanyama, the unanimous Defensive Player of the Year and the face of basketball's future. ESPN's BPI gave New York just a 31% chance to win, pointing to San Antonio's superior record, home court advantage, and battle-tested playoff run. But the Knicks immediately stole Game 1 behind Brunson's explosive 13-point fourth quarter after shooting just 7 for 22 through the first 3. In Game 2, despite another rough shooting night, Brunson delivered when it mattered most, drilling a one-legged game-tying fadeaway over the 7'5" Wembanyama before sinking the go-ahead free throw. New York escaped with both road games to take a shocking 2-0 lead back to Madison Square Garden, but Game 3 belonged to San Antonio, as Wembanyama and Stephon Castle became the youngest duo in NBA Finals history to each score 20 points. Then came June 10th. For nearly 3 quarters, Game 4 was a nightmare for New York. Wembanyama dominated, even taunting the Garden crowd as San Antonio buried 14 threes and built a 76-49 halftime lead. Brunson scored 15 in the second quarter just to keep the Knicks afloat, but the Spurs stretched the margin to 29 early in the third. Madison Square Garden was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. Mike Brown responded by unleashing the rarely used duo of Brunson and Alvarado in the backcourt to increase pressure on the defense. OG caught fire, scoring 11 in the third, but entering the fourth quarter, New York still trailed by 17, and teams in the NBA Finals were 0-96 when facing that deficit. Brunson poured in 17 second-half points, and with every basket, the Garden transformed from a library into complete chaos. Late in the fourth quarter, after Wembanyama forced Brunson into a missed floater with 18 seconds remaining, De'Aaron Fox raced ahead, grabbed the loose ball, and attempted a transition layup instead of running out the clock. Chasing the play the entire way was OG Anunoby. He flew in for the stunning chase down block that gave New York one final chance. And out of the timeout, the Knicks had 5 seconds left, trailing by 1. Brunson drove right and launched a contested long-range 3 over Wembanyama, but Fox sprinted over to double-team him at the release. The shot bounced high off the rim, and there was OG Anunoby, untouched. He tipped it in with 1.2 seconds remaining, and the Garden went into complete pandemonium. Karl-Anthony Towns deflected San Antonio's inbound pass, sealing the greatest comeback in NBA Finals history. The Spurs never recovered. Back in Texas, Cat fouled out early, leaving Brunson to shoulder the franchise once again. He answered with the Knicks Finals record, 45 points, including 13 straight in the fourth quarter to slam the door shut. As De'Aaron Fox's final prayer missed and OG secured the rebound, 53 years of heartbreak finally came to an end. Jalen Brunson was named the unanimous Finals MVP, averaging 33 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds. And the 31% probability had been shattered. The sacrifices, the criticism, the chemistry, the culture, it had all been worth it. New York thought they had signed just a regular point guard back in 2022. Instead, they signed the man who ended 53 years of waiting, the King of New York, and the greatest free agent signing in NBA history, Jalen Marquis Brunson.